Okay, starting your own business. Everybody likes to throw it out there. Like, you can wake up one day and start your own business. It's not as easy. People say start your own business, and we act as if that's going to be a solution to solving black unemployment. Now, it will be for some, but not for everybody. It's not as easy. You don't wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to start a business. Because, quite frankly, you can have a business, but not necessarily do well. So you can be a business owner, but be broke. Okay, saying that you're a business owner doesn't mean you're balling. I've got too many business cards of people who want to front and act like just because they have a business, they're balling and making money. No, it doesn't work that way. Now, first of all, you need some sort of experience. So you're going to have to work for somebody. So if you have a problem getting employed and getting experience, how can you then say, I'm going to go start a business? It doesn't work that way. Okay? You need experience. When you graduate from medical school, you don't, get your Bill Cosby on and go, set up your family practice in the basement of your house. It doesn't work that way. Okay? Typically a doctor will work for another hospital, or he'll work for another doctor who has his own private practice. So he will get in that experience. He will build his reputation. So when he hands out his business cards, he can say, I'm Dr. So-and-so, and I have 10 years of experience in this field. Okay? So when he wants to go open up his own practice, right, he has the experience. He's not brand new, because who's going to want to go to a brand new doctor? Okay, who's really going to do it? So you have to have some sort of experience. Same thing as the plumber. Okay, the plumber, he'll put on his business card, 15 years worth of experience. All 15 years, was he a business owner? No, he was probably working for some, company, whether it was ran by his dad or uncle or whatnot. He was working for them, learned the ropes, knew what to do, and now he feels like he's good enough to venture out on his own. So he has the experience. Okay? Secondly, the second challenge is clientele. Lord knows that black people don't support black businesses. It is what it is. I've seen too many bookstores and, other clothing stores. Granted, they didn't do the best job in terms of running their business. Back to the whole, it's okay to be unofficial because we're black. And that really comes back to bite you in the ass. So we'd rather go spend money by something ran by white people because we know they're legit. We know they're legit, but when it comes to us, we laugh about not being legit, but then bitch and complain when people don't support what we're trying to do. So yeah, you had that going on, but they didn't support. Okay, so if you're black and you're like, man, I want to start my own business, a big challenge is going to be what? Clientele. Okay, you have to be the best of the best of the best of the best, because that's the only way people are going to look at you normally. As a black guy, look at Obama. Everybody wants to act as if, they did Obama a favor, but in reality, Obama's more qualified than the vast majority of people who are in the political sector. He's a super duper high achiever. But for the most part, people, if Obama was white, he would be celebrated as this big time academic, this big time well accomplished person. Everybody will be celebrating. But because he's black, it's just like, okay, you're normal, welcome to the club. Right? It's like, if you're white, you only need $5 to get in, but if you're black, you need $20 to get in. Right? And we're just going to look at you normally. You don't even stand out. You're one of us, but in reality, you're above us. So you have to be that good for people to want to mess with you and do business with you. Okay? Because honestly, it's really tough to say that, yeah, I'm going to primarily market towards black people. It is what it is, especially when we have, we don't even have spending power. We spend money that we shouldn't be spending, so I guess that's, that's somewhat of a spending power, but to me, it's, pseudo power. It's not even disposable income. It's money that we can be using for something else. So, calling it spending power really doesn't do us any, deal of great good. But even then, it's like, what are you going to do? Any sort of business, you're kind of, you're going to be providing some sort of secondary need. Okay, so how much disposable income do black people have? And even if they do have it, what are we spending it on? How many black clothing companies have we had since, the 90s that just never did well? But yet we'll stay buying Polo, that whole Ralph Lauren, DKNY type stuff ran by white people. Okay, but if it's black, we don't even support it. There's no reason to why we don't have our own version of Armani or our own version of Gucci. But once again, we don't support it. Yeah, a lot of these clothing companies, they don't necessarily make the right type of clothes to begin with. But, if they did, how many black people are going to buy it? So you're almost forced from the word go to have a non-black clientele or a mixed clientele. Okay, and once again, you're always going to be providing a secondary service. You're not going to be providing, gas, water, power. It's going to be secondary. Okay, so with that being said, it's going to be really hard to tap into certain markets. Just coming from where I'm coming from, like I said, I have some things in the work, and the biggest thing the problem that I have now in terms of coming up with my own business plan is who's my target demographic, okay, and how willing are they to deal with a black guy? The sad thing is, there'll be the little black boy who's selling $2 candy bars to raise money, right? No one buys from him. No one buys from him. They just walk past him. But the little white girl who's a Girl Scout, the mom's, sitting in the parking lot in her Mercedes SUV talking about my child's a 4.0 student, and she has some, license plate holder with where she went to school, and the little white girl's raising money for her Girl Scout troop so they can go on a trip. There's a line and people are, oh, let me buy from you, as if they need the money, right? So, and I look at that from a child's point of view, and I'm like, damn, look at what's going on. Right? Black people, they're not buying my fucking chocolate bar. Let me see what white people want to do. White people, they're not buying from me either. They're going to buy from the white girl who doesn't even need their money. Right? The same people that her mother's going to, later tell them, oh, you don't want to mess with those people. So, you have that going on. Next, you have the whole idea of money. Startup money. There's a lot of cost that goes into starting up a business. My boy just started up a nonprofit, and he was telling me, yeah, if you really want to start one up, you're looking at maybe $1,500, $2,000 to get everything you need to get done. Okay? You don't have a job, so where's all this startup money going to come from? The banks, they look at, if you want that whole business loan, they're going to look at your business plan. And they're going to, give you the money based off of what they think is going to work, right? So they're going to look at what you're trying to do, and if they feel like it's a sound investment, they're going to mess with you. But if they don't, they're not going to mess with you. And they're going to know that you're black. They're going to know, okay, how many people are going to be willing to, deal with a white or a black guy? If it's a white guy, everybody trusts a white guy. A white guy in a suit, no one is, afraid. Even though all that Wall Street, misappropriation of funds, those are all white men in suits, but, everybody trusts a white guy in a suit, right? But if you're a black guy, how many people are going to trust you? So you can have a sound business plan, but at the end of the day, it's like, we don't know how successful you're going to be. But a white girl can come in, and say, I want to do the same thing. And they may say, oh, we'll give you the money. We know people are going to do business with you. So the banks may not even be an option. Or we're not even like the Asians who have Asian-owned banks where it's just like, we'll give you the money, right? That whole, Asian connection. Don't worry about it. We'll give you the money. Forget if you qualify. We'll put our faith in terms of what you can do, and we'll support you, right? Or investors, okay? And a lot of the times, a lot of these, mom and pop startup businesses that, make millions, and sometimes people do a profile on what they did. Listen to what they say, and they'll tell you, yeah, our seed money came from our, parents or her parents or friends and cousins and relatives. So they're able to pull from their family and come up with shit, maybe $100,000 to start up their business. Especially if you're talking about selling a product where you have to make the product, store the product, get all the sorts of, licensings and all of the good stuff, right? Market the product. All that takes money, right? And even if you're trying to sell a product, you know what I mean? If you're trying to sell a service, maybe the different types of insurance that you would need. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it, right? So what are you going to do? Save up enough money? That would be extremely hard. Once again, you have to be working for somebody to save up money, right? So, what I'm trying to say is it's not as easy as 1, 2, 3, go start up your own business. It doesn't work that way. And yeah, starting up a business is something that we need to fix black unemployment, but it doesn't solve everything. Simply having a black-owned business isn't going to solve black unemployment issues. So people have to understand that. I just get tired of people saying, go start a black business. As if you're automatically going to be successful. As if black people are willing and waiting to support you. As if white people are going to, look at you and say that you're black and just turn right away. So, anyways, y'all take it easy.